Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance and interest to working Rhode Islanders. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition. Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. Over the last several months, there's been news about what's going on in RIPTA, and we thought it was important to be able to bring in representatives from ATU Division 618. My guests this evening are the President, Paul Harrington, and the Vice President, Tom Cute. Gentlemen, thank you for coming.
Bob, thank you for having us.
Over the last several months, we've seen things in the Journal and heard comments in the paper about some of the things that are happening at RIPTA, some good things, some bad things. And I just thought it was important that we have a conversation this evening to talk about it and shed some light about some of the new and innovative things, some of the good things that the union members have been doing to improve the system and work together. Paul, when we talk about the mass transit system, what's the state right as we speak today?
Our mass transit system, Bob, is a very effective transportation system. It's a very unique transportation system in the fact that we're one of only 2 states that have statewide transit. Most of it's either regionally, district, citywide. But us and Delaware, both withstanding, are the only 2 states that have a statewide system. So it gives the state a very unique type of transportation, that not only do we have a dense population and frequency of service in the city or province, but it actually extends out to the borders, Wesley, Woonsocket, Newport, and we're able to offer the residents of Rhode Island that type of service. So it's very unique, as well as the paratransit or ride division that's attached to Fixed Route that offers a very specialized service to the elderly and disabled, and what we refer to them as not passengers but clients.
Well, I do know from firsthand knowledge from my mother-in-law that the ride service that you provide is superior to anything anybody could even imagine. Your drivers are very, very careful in so many ways to make sure that their clients, as opposed to passengers, are well cared for. They absolutely go out of their way, as do the bus drivers that do the regular runs around the state. I think that most people who haven't ridden a bus lately would be very surprised at not just the bus, but the drivers, the personalities of the people involved. And so when we talk about that, and we can see the physical changes over the last number of years in the buses themselves, let's talk about the future. Let's talk about some of the things that will take place, even some of the legislation that we're looking for over the next 10 months.
Well, first I'd like to comment on your observation regarding the RIDE program, and I appreciate the comment you made. Again, that's a very specific type of transportation. They're caregivers. People don't understand the role they play in these clients' lives. They go door to door. They assist them down a driveway or a sidewalk to get into a van. And then obviously they transfer them to where they need to go. But there is more than just driving a van, and they do an exceptional, incredible job. And
it's actually funny you mention it, because you know, my mother-in-law will look forward to going. She'll have a doctor's appointment and go, but she gets a chance to see what's going on in the community when otherwise she wouldn't be able to do that. And again, she comments so many times on the drivers themselves and how compassionate, understanding, and caring they are. And that truly makes a big difference in an attitude of somebody who's older, who's probably going to a doctor, who's anxious. And I can tell you firsthand, she looks forward to those drives because of the driver, because of the care that they're given.
And my vice president, he's been here, he's got 32 years of service on the property, and he'd be the perfect person to ask where RIPTA was, and as far as technology and improvements, into where it is today, Tom.
Well, yes, all our vehicles are wheelchair equipped, handicapped equipment. That's both fixed route and the ride vehicles. They all have lifts. They're all air conditioned. They're climate controlled. They're warm in the winter and they're cool in the summer. They're all modern equipment. We've got a new bus order that just arrived 50 new vehicles have come in, fixed route vehicles, beautiful buses. And, you know, we're going to have an ATMS system put in, that's automatic transit management system. They're going to have GPS, automatic voice announcements. There'll be cameras on board for security for both the passengers and the operators. So we've come a long way from when I first started driving old GMC buses that, you know, the windows opened and, you know, the smoke came out of the tailpipe. And
Yeah.
It's been a long ride for myself, but I've seen the technology change over the years.
Well, I think, as a matter of fact, this is your 100th anniversary
This is our 100th anniversary this year of the division, and we'll be having a celebration in June. I'm very proud of the fact that in today's climate, especially in labor, that any union that survives 100 years is quite a testament not only to the people who founded it, but all those union members who are standing on the shoulders of the founding members of this union. And in fact, I'll just take a brief minute to tell you that our contract contains some of the same language that was first negotiated back in 1913. Some of the same language is still in that book. So it's more than a contract, it's a historical document of a relationship between not only the current managers of the state that run it, but the private operators that go back to the trolley car days.
It is, and you know, I know that in the library at the Institute, where we keep many of the documents on labor history, there are so many references to the transit system in the state for so many years, and I often think of some of those pictures of those buses that were very rounded with windows that open and smoke that came from the tailpipe. As a matter of fact, my wife's grandmother was one of those drivers. Grandmother, tried again. Grandfather was a driver of one of those buses a long time ago, and even the pride that they took in their job more than 50 years ago is very similar to that same pride. And that comes from that pride of being that union member with a contract who is really making sure that the system works effectively.
That's correct. And over the years, our members, you know, we rise well before the sun comes up. So that's a 24-hour operation over at the Melrose Street on Elmwood Avenue, the garages. They have to prep the buses the night before and make sure everything's repaired. And then the operators start showing up about 3:30 in the morning, pull their buses out to go to various locations to start their days. And we move roughly 70,000 commuters a day. Half of that amount are going to a job. So you can see the value and the real lifeblood of Rhode Island. All those bus routes is moving people through the economy to their jobs and taking people to school, to higher education, providing access to medical facilities, doctor's visits, hospitals, or recreation. And you know, we're very proud of the job that we are Rhode Island's mobility manager. And we look forward to another long future of providing public transit services to the citizens of Rhode Island. And I know I'm very proud, as well as Paul is, of all our members and the job that they do on a daily basis, battling traffic, weather conditions, and it's a stressful job to drive a bus. It's not an easy job driving a bus, though some people look at you and say, oh, what a nice job that is, you're sitting there. But it isn't. It's a very difficult job at times.
Well, particularly in the traffic that takes place now. If we took a look at the increase in the number of vehicles that travel on public and state highways all the time.
Yeah, that's correct.
But I think you bring up a very, very good point, and most people don't understand it. RIPTA is a very strong internal piece of the economic engine of this state, because the numbers of students that it takes to higher education institutions, the numbers of people that go to their job each and every day in the development of Quonset, RIPTA played a significant role in making sure that those kind of things could happen. Because I know from the training end that we do at the Institute, there are many people that we could train for a job, but they don't have a car. And without the transportation system that supports it, economic development could very well slow down to a much slower rate than we're currently experiencing. Even though it's not a great economic development period for anybody in the United States, the transportation system is critical to that. Don't you agree, Paul?
Absolutely. You know, I believe that mass transit, and especially in Rhode Island, is going to be a factor in our economic recovery. And hopefully as the economy rebounds and jobs start coming back, not every job is going to be a corporate job or an office job. It'll start, I personally believe that it'll start at the low end and work its way up. And those are the people that depend on mass transit to get to and from work. And also the small business depends on their employees. And so if they're going to build a small business in Rhode Island, mass transit is it's a key factor to that. And it has to be utilized, and they have to maintain it. There's no question about it. Like, you know, mass transit is a lifeline to tens of thousands of people every day going to and from work now, and hopefully even more in the future. You know, it's a lifeline to the senior and elderly to live a quality life. You brought up a great aspect recently when you said it is a lifeline to higher education and the thousands of students that depend on mass transit to achieve a better education. So, you know, it can't be, it has to be maintained if not improved. And that's what we're looking to do, especially in the next legislative session.
Yeah, you talk about the next legislative session, and I think there's a number, I think 3 items in particular that you're really focusing on over the next 10 months. And it would be interesting to have a conversation about those pieces because, you know, I think the general public probably doesn't understand anything from the cost of one of those buses to the amount of work that goes in from the union's point of view, working with the legislature to try and bring about the kind of change that's required to ensure that that system is going to be there for our children and their children to follow. What are the pieces in particular that you think will make the difference? I know you talked about the central maintenance, for example.
Central maintenance is something, since I've been elected, I've been the union president business agent for a little over a year and a half, and it's something I have pushed up at the State House. And I've been fortunate enough to grab the ear of Senator DePalma, who has become an advocate for the centralized maintenance. And what we identified is there's an old building on the property at Elmwood Avenue. And there was, give or take, about 10 years ago, they built a brand new maintenance facility, which is called the Chafee Building. And we can get to that later and why it's, you know, it's been so named. This old building is a perfect opportunity, and I've sold or tried to sell that. They can invest some money, make the modifications and improvements to the building to provide central maintenance to all the state vehicles. And during my first month or so up at the State House and Department of Administration, we identified that the state has roughly a fleet of 2,200 vehicles that are maintained throughout the state at all different service stations. So we've come up with this idea to do a centralized maintenance, to invest into a building that's on the property. We have the best mechanics as far as we're concerned. They're on staff at RIPTA, and we believe that we could save the state millions of dollars in the cost of parts, because we could buy them wholesale, cost of labor because of mechanics. They would have to hire, obviously, some mechanics to fulfill that obligation to the state in those 2,200 vehicles. But we could absorb that through RIPTA, and we could provide the state an essential savings. And I think that because they are professional at nature as mechanics, they'd be able to do a very effective job. And preventive maintenance would actually save the state money as the vehicles could be kept in service longer, which is an additional savings. And again, Senator Palmer has been an advocate for me on this, and we're moving forward. And supposedly there's some money put in the budget to start the process and to evaluate the building to see what type of financial needs to improve and maintain it.
Well, it really does make a lot of sense when you think about it because, you know, you get that regular maintenance, and oftentimes what happens with vehicles, whether they're state vehicles or not, there are those people who will only get a car fixed once it starts making noise that it should have been dealt with prior to that. So, I mean, it really does make a lot of sense that if you have central maintenance and routine kind of maintenance, you prolong the life of the vehicle. And in reality, you know, you provide the opportunity to use the expertise that's in-house through RIPTA already. In terms of some of the other legislation, I think that, Tom, you talked about UPass and the role of that.
Right. Well, UPass is a program that has been in effect for many years at RIPTA, but mostly the participants are private higher education facilities like Brown University, Providence College, Bryant University, Salve Regina, and Roger Williams and Johnson Wales downtown. They build into their tuition a small payment each semester, and they're able to ride RIPTA services with no charge on their school ID. And it's been extended to the public schools, but not to the extent that the private schools have. And right now, I believe CCRI, RIC, and URI can purchase those RIPTA Fair products at half price. We would like to see the same deal given to the public school, that it's given to the privates, that they have it built into their tuition. Not a large amount of money, but something that will certainly sustain RIPTA to provide service to those universities and colleges. We have bus service that goes into every campus for RIC and URI and CCRI. We service all the campuses. So it would provide RIPTA with more revenue stream and give them better service.
Well, I think when you take a look at it, I know that, even taking a look at the parking lot of the state colleges, whether we're talking about URI, RIC, or CCRI, there's always an issue. And in terms of people finding parking. And that kind of UPass mentality in terms of extending and encouraging students to use it, in reality will alleviate some of those parking issues. And the schedule works hand in hand with the schedule of the classes. I mean, we've seen it each and every day in terms of when classes start and the buses are there and the runs in between, and there's not a backlog. Students aren't standing in line waiting to get on the bus.
Right.
So there's lots of opportunity to alleviate some of those parking issues. But again, generating some income for RIPTA to allow it to continue to do this stuff that it does.
And also, just another point, and it's significant, is that a parent wouldn't have to worry if their child was living at URI and decided to go into Providence for a night. They know that they would have transportation back to the university, so they would be safe. And with all the headlines about alcohol consumption and driving, it certainly would provide another safety valve or safety net for a parent whose child is at URI or one of the institutions that we currently serve with the UPass. They can get on a bus and just swipe their pass and get back to their dorms or wherever they're living safely.
Well, I think it's so important because in reality, what we have here are the people who drive the buses, manage the maintenance on the buses, the union looking at things in a more comprehensive way, saying, how can we make the best use? And in reality, in this day and age, what's really important is for all of us to look at it, not just the consumers, but the people who have been doing it. You're a case in point with the two of you for 18 years and 33 years. You can't help but have a broad base of experience on recommendations on how to improve the system.
Absolutely. It's a bill that, again, that is I'm very fond of, and I believe it has merit. I think we should encourage the young people in Rhode Island to utilize mass transit. I think it's something that and hopefully the General Assembly, we can get on board to finally get this out of committee and get it on the floor and maybe get a passage on it. Not only will it generate dollars for mass transit and help our financial situation, but also it will give us the money to maintain, if not improve, service in those districts. URI is a generator, and the term in mass transit generator is any institution, business, or even an establishment that brings people, that develops ridership. And South County has become a huge, huge ridership in South County as people migrated down there to live more year-round. The University of Rhode Island has grown. They continue to build. Unfortunately, a lot of the building they've done in the last 5 years has been parking lots to give spaces to students.
Exactly.
Our biggest parking ride is CCRI. One of our biggest parking rides is CCRI. It's not a parking ride. It's because there's no access for kids down there to park. They park at the university, at CCRI in Warwick. They get on a bus and they get off in the heart of URI because they can't park down there. There's no satellites. There's no places. So I'm hopeful that this particular piece of legislation can get to the floor and we can have some really good dialogue and have an opportunity to get a UPass for our public schools.
Well, I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to even talk about that because I think that the viewership are probably not aware of the potential that UPass has, or even when we have the discussion about the central maintenance. And I think there's another piece of legislation that you were talking about, the O'Grady.
Yeah, it's called the O'Grady bill. It got that name last year by Representative Jay O'Grady out of Lincoln. Jay's a fabulous young politician. In early years, and he understands the vital role that mass transit plays in the state of Rhode Island, and not only in the economic recovery, but moving forward. So he understands that the finances. And he also understands, and what I was really quite impressed. I did a show on labor vision with us, with Jay O'Grady and Representative O'Grady, and he really was very comprehensive about the federal level of funding for mass transit. He understands that the state of Rhode Island needs to develop a sustainable funding source. And the General Assembly has been near and dear to mass transit, and it goes all the way back to the governor's father when he established his agency in 1966. They've never turned their backs on mass transit for the residents of Rhode Island, but they've been throwing us a lifeline for years with the gas tax. You know, and unfortunately, as time in the beginning was a great solution to modifying the budget so mass transit could be moved forward, but it's unfortunately it's outlived its age.
Right.
And as people drive more economic cars and drive less because of the economy, our funding source at RIPTA has declined. But yet, there's an incredible need for additional service because more and more people are riding the bus. Our ridership is up. I think last time I heard, I believe it was up either 8.5% for last month and 11% for last year. So that in itself tells you, wait a minute, you know, how can, if you have a ridership that's climbing and a declining revenue, obviously we're going to be at crossroads, and that's where we are. And they've thrown lifelines to us each and every year to get us through. But it's time for them to, in the General Assembly, to give us sustainable funding. And O'Grady's bill is comprehensive, to say the least. It's attaching fees to licenses and registrations. It's developing a transit fund up at the State House. They have no intention of just handing the money over. And some of that money, and a lot of that money actually, is going to be earmarked for DOT. So it's a transportation in general, because DOT needs funding and proper. They're always chasing their tail as well, like RIPTA. So this bill is really comprehensive as far as the Department of Transportation and the Rhode Island Public Transit Authority, and it will set up a sustainable funding source for us, so we can at least maintain, if not improve, transit for the residents of Rhode Island.
Well, I think maintaining or having that fund that you can depend upon each year is so critical, you know, and when you come up with the ideas of the UPass to increase ridership, to provide some new income. Let me ask a question, because when you were talking about how many new buses you have coming in, over 50 units?
50 buses.
What's the cost of one of those large?
They run probably $350,000, $375,000 a piece.
And how many years do you generally get?
They keep them for 12 years or 1,000,000 miles, whatever comes first. It's usually the 12 years.
So really, when you can come to look at the whole thing, there's a whole cost analysis in terms of, you know, the purchase, how long you keep them, how long they're rotated. Right. And I suspect the ride buses, I think I saw a ride bus the other day with a new paint job.
Yeah, there's 28 vehicles in all that were purchased and brought in with a custom paint job. It's like a bluish green.
Yeah. Yeah, they really do stand out. But again, you know, it's taking a look at those things don't come for nothing, and there's a cost attached to having that.
There's a 20% match with federal funds, capital funds that come out of Washington D.C. Most transit agencies are participants in that, and what happens in Rhode Island is they bond out the difference. They have a bond referendum on a general election, and they'll have RIPTA in there for X amount of millions of dollars to purchase new vehicles or upgrade facilities.
Right.
So that's where the match comes from. So when they get approval for the match, then they go out and they spec out the bus they're going to buy, and it takes about a year from the time that they put the order in till they get them. So right now, it's been about a year, we're getting those 50 buses coming in. So they'll get them plated and they'll be on the road. You'll probably be seeing them on the road within a short period of time. Well,
and you said earlier, you know, these buses are not the buses that they were driving in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. They're all air conditioned. I know when even getting on them, I think it's more and more impressive just to see the whole technology that's involved. And you say the new ones are coming in with GPS and the latest technologies that make them even more efficient and more effective.
Yeah, they're all computerized. I think there's 6 or 7 onboard computers that run the bus. The driver operates the bus, but there's systems that, you know, let the driver know if there's a maintenance problem, you know, from A to Z, that it's covered. So the technology is outstanding on these vehicles.
And even for the people that you have that do the maintenance on the bus, that's constantly upgrading their technical skills to be able to address any issues. So are they sent out to the manufacturer for the training?
Yeah, they usually what they do is when they purchase the vehicle, they'll purchase with that a warranty as well as training for any new technology. And it's interesting you bring that up, because we have a fleet of hybrids. And those are the buses that kind of look like spaceships. And on the top of them, you'll see them, they'll go up, and those are the batteries. And they're a hybrid bus. They run on, a lot of the time on the batteries and on electricity. And that technology is all new in the transit industry. And they're very expensive buses, but they, again, they save a great deal of fuel and diesel, which is very expensive. And buses don't get unfortunately, a lot of mileage per gallon. So there's a cost savings there by the authority, and they made a huge investment in 53 of these hybrid buses. And the technology, as well as the maintenance that goes along with them, they need additional training and expertise.
How many buses are in the entire fleet? Ride aside, the smaller ride buses. How many buses are on the route ride?
Well, probably got about 240 fixed route vehicles and maybe another 100 ride vehicles.
Now, in terms of do those buses go on one route and stay there for an indefinite period of time, or are they rotated?
They're rotated daily.
Are they?
Rotated daily, yep.
So I think, the general public is probably not the least bit aware of some of the information that you brought forward in terms of the financing of a transit system that we all agree is intricate to the economic development of the state. And I think it's critical that the residents of the state encourage state legislators to make that kind of commitment to ensure that the transit system that supports students, supports workers, supports the elderly, supports the entire state, is given the resources it needs to be successful. Let me have a conversation about some of the other things that have been happening at RIPTA in terms of administration.
Well, the administration, as anybody who's been following the newspaper or the media over time, we had a CEO, and his name was Charles Dimway. And he was in August put on administrative leave. And the governor had the fortitude to fortunately bring in Raymond Studley to be a new interim general manager or CEO and take over the day-to-day operations of the Rhode Island Public Transit Authority with a resource team. And they've done a fantastic job. And I have to admit that even though they don't have transit expertise, they were quick on their feet and they're learning it very quickly. They've only been there, again, like I said, since August. And they've done a very good job, and they've been very fair with the employees that work there. And that was part of our problem with the prior CEO. And he had contempt for the employees. It was disappointing. And I was out passing that message along, and that his management skills were questioned, or I should say lack thereof. Again, fortunately, the governor and other key people noticed that there were problems at the authority, and they took the action and put him on administrative leave. And that's where he stands today. And eventually, there'll be some closure on this at some point in time. And I wish Mr. Dimway great success in his future endeavors and whatever transit agency Bobby works at, as long as it is in Oz.
Well, I know firsthand that what your administration, in terms of the union, in terms of Division 618, it truly is a partnership. I know that both you and Tommy work very closely with the administration to make sure that the things that need to be done are done. That you are both visionaries in terms of looking at the kind of legislation that needs to be promoted, the kind of personality that needs to be within that whole transit authority to make it a place where people want to go on the bus. So I really believe that that the Division 618 deserves a lot of credit, and the leadership of 618 deserves a lot of credit for the way that you're handling the administration issue and handling that transition to a brand new period of technology in terms of public transportation. What other observations would you like to make about RIPTA in the future?
Well, from my perspective, as I look at RIPTA as a growing entity, moving forward, and it's going to eventually and hopefully get sustainable funding, and it's going to be a key factor in the state of Rhode Island. And in 1966, there was a company, UTC. They were the managing partner of the mass transit system here, and they went bankrupt. And at that point in time, there was a young governor who looked at RIPTA, but it wasn't RIPTA at the time. looked at our mass transit system and understood, he was a visionary, he understood what it meant to the quality of life of Rhode Island and the businesses that it serves. And that was Governor John Chafee, and he formed this agency in 1966, and it's done nothing but improve since. And I see a good future for Rhode Island Public Transit Authority and the service we provide through our fixed route as well as through our ride and paratransit system.
Yeah, I think that what Paul explained is exactly true, and some credit should go to the late Senator Claiborne Pell, because he's the father of the Urban Mass Transit Act of 1964, which enabled the federal government to create funding for failing transit and traction companies all around the country. And Governor Chafee took advantage of that in 1966 when the UTC failed, and there was a need for public transportation in the greater metro area. Rhode Island, believe it or not, Providence, Pawtucket, Central Falls, and probably one of the most densely populated areas in the country. And Providence is really part of a metro area that extends out. It's extended out now since the growth of suburban sprawl up into Woonsocket, out to Warwick, Cranston, towards the 44 Route 44 corridor. So the need for transit has grown with that out to those areas. And I think that going forward, as rail starts to come into play, as an economic generator, employers will only go where there is good mass transit, especially access to downtown Providence, where you have a train station within the walking distance of the Central Business District, Kennedy Plaza, where all the routes from RIPTA come in from all over the state. So downtown Providence, and even extending it out towards Pawtucket, for they have tried to revitalize their downtown area, they're going to need transit, because those people come in, they have dollars in their pocket, and the way to grow the economy is people spend money. And you know, bus riders spend money; they're taxpayers, and you know, employers will be looking to have a workforce they can get transported to work, and they'll go into those urban areas that were once abandoned. They'll become more attractive because of mass transit and development around mass transit sites. So I think the future is good for RIPTA. Currently, they're doing a comprehensive organizational assessment. That's what Mr. Dimway had requested when he first took over the reins over at RIPTA, and you know, that's going to dictate a lot of the future growth and direction of where we're going to go. I believe that the personnel that are over there are professional people like Paul and myself, and we can give as much input to them as any outside agency that comes in and looks at us. And just one final word on that, the people who do run that comprehensive organizational assessment study had told Paul and I in a meeting that RIPTA is a big city transit operation in a little town.
It is, it is. And gentlemen, I do want to thank you. I want to thank you for your commitment to Division 618 and your leadership, because it truly does make a difference for the members and for all of the residents in the state who make use of the transit authority, who make use of the transit system. I think that your point is extremely important in understanding that the infrastructure of economic development, the central piece of that, or one of the central pieces, is a statewide transportation system that needs to be supported by the state. And so I truly want to thank you. I want to thank you for the work that you do every day, for your commitment. I think between the two of you, you have well over 50 years of commitment to public state transportation. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for appearing on the show. My guests this evening were the leadership of ATU Division 618. Paul Harrington is the business agent and the president, and Tom Cute is the vice president. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. I look forward to it.
Bob.
And congratulations on 100 years of service in the state.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen DeMeo. I'm the administrator of the Occupational Environmental Health Center of Rhode Island. We are located at 410 South Main Street, Providence, in the International Laborers Building, and our phone number here is 401-621-2228. And the purpose of the center is to help workers that are having a problem and are not feeling well and they're having trouble getting diagnosed by their doctor for any kind of occupational or environmental symptoms. And we have a doctor on staff here, Medical Director Leo Korowski, who will talk to you and go over all your clinic notes with your doctor and help to get you well again. The topic we are here today to discuss with Dr. Okarowski is the flu and how important it is for everyone to receive the flu vaccine so we can prevent the flu from spreading.
Hi, my name is Dr. Lee Okarowski. I'm the Medical Director of the Occupational and Environmental Health Center of Rhode Island. And I was asked today to speak a little bit about the current influenza outbreak that's encompassing most of the United States, and also talk about some ways we can prevent that with things like the flu shot and also hygiene. And also, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about ways we can prevent it from impacting us in the workplace. Influenza this year has been particularly widespread, many reasons for that, but one of them, the flu started early this year. Typically, we don't see high numbers till after the new year, but this year, influenza outbreaks started occurring across the United States approximately at the end of November, early December. And since that time, many have come down with the disease, and we're often asked at the center how best we can prevent these outbreaks and what folks can do to protect themselves from getting the flu either at home or the workplace. And the cornerstone of that, as outlined by the Centers for Disease Control, is the flu shot. And one of the questions that often comes up is who should get the flu shot? And the answer is really everybody greater than approximately 6 months of age. But there are a number of vulnerable populations who in particular should get the flu shot. These typically are children under 5 years of age, pregnant women, and older folks, and those with some other medical conditions, things like asthma, heart disease.
First of all, I would like to ask Dr. Okarowski, what are the signs and symptoms of the flu?
Well, I first want to start with what's the flu, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. Influenza is really a viral illness that affects the nose, throat, and lungs. Oftentimes, we hear terms like the GI flu. That's a little bit of a misnomer. The flu is really a virus that infects the upper respiratory system. That would include things like the nose, the throat, and the lungs. Segueing into Mary Ellen's question, it's really helpful to be able to recognize early signs and symptoms of the flu. Those would include things like fever, cough, sore throat, runny or stuffy nose, muscle and body aches, headaches, fatigue. But the hallmark of early flu is really the development of the fever and the high fever, which is really oftentimes what separates flu from things like the common cold.
Now, how do we go about not spreading the flu? Do all those anti-germ, antibacterial things really work? Should we be using those?
Those can be helpful and effective if somebody in your home or in the office or workplace is infected with the flu. Flu ultimately is spread by respiratory droplets that are coming from coughing, sneezing, talking. But yes, in being around sick individuals, things like hand sanitizer, but also basic hygiene is effective in controlling and stopping the flu. Things like washing your keyboard at work, cleaning your phone, separation from those in your family that may have active flu. Those are all good, effective strategies.
Could you please also explain to us the period of contagiousness?
Sure. This is a question we get asked a lot. Somebody who has developed the flu is essentially contagious 1 day before they develop the illness and up to 5 days after they've completed the sickness. And so what that means is that folks who develop the flu at the workplace or at home basically should stay in a relatively isolated environment. What that means is if you have the flu or think you have the flu, don't come to work. Let your physician know and your employer know. But if you're treating a family member, say, that may have the flu, the typical recommendations are to provide care to them, but also consider putting them in a separate room and practicing basic safe hygiene and allowing them to recover in a relatively isolated environment so that you don't spread the flu to other members of your family.
Can you explain to us today what the complications of the flu are, Dr. Borowski?
Pneumonia, serious dehydration, sinus infections, but can be particularly problematic to other folks that have serious health conditions. It can make things like asthma worse, diabetes worse, heart disease worse, and that's why it's so important for those folks who have those conditions to get the flu shot.
What is the best way for us to prevent from getting the flu?
Unquestionably, it's get your flu shot. And as I stated previously, basically recommendations are anybody 6 months or older should really get the flu shot.
Is it too late to get the flu shot? What's the best time to get the flu shot?
Absolutely not. Flu season typically runs from October to May, and flu vaccine is typically available from September all the way through May. But right now, as we approach the January-February time period, many people are asking, is it too late? No. You certainly can get the flu shot to protect you, your coworkers, and or your family at this time.
Is everybody eligible to get the flu shot?
No, there are in fact people that should not get the flu shot, but that's a small group. The first group are those with a severe egg allergy, and that has to do with how the vaccine is prepared. The other one are those who have had, in the past, a severe reaction to the flu. The third category is people who are actively sick at the time that they wish to get vaccinated. Those people should wait till their current illness resolves. And the last one is those with a history of a rare neurological disorder called Guillain-Barré. Those folks should also not be vaccinated. But vaccination is not contraindicated if you're pregnant, for example. But if you have any questions or concerns about getting the flu shot, your real resource is your primary care doc or your local health department.
And who might be at high risk for getting the flu?
As we stated earlier, the real vulnerable populations are the very young and the very old, and those with major medical conditions, things like asthma, diabetes, heart disease. But it's also important to understand that there are vulnerable populations with regard to where they live. For example, folks in nursing homes and the like, people who are in extended care facilities. Children in daycare often are at higher risk just because of the populations that surround them.
I received a flu shot last year. Do I need to get another one this year?
Yes, actually, a flu shot is basically only good for the year it's given. We get a lot of questions as to why. That's because the flu constantly changes, and so too does the vaccine.
I've seen some reports saying that the flu vaccine this year is not effective. Is that true?
Actually, no. The reports have demonstrated so far, and this is always changing data, that the current flu shot is effective in about 60% of the cases. But what this means is that basically somebody who gets the flu shot has a significantly less likely chance of getting the flu. But it's also important to point out that those who do receive their flu shot, although they may still get the flu when they do, those who get the flu, even if they have been infected, their symptoms are far less and they recover much quicker if they've actually been vaccinated. So currently, right now, the Centers for Disease Control is not recommending not to get the flu shot. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They're recommending folks to get vaccinated. I also wanted to spend a little time, we often get questions about where we can get vaccinated. Most primary care providers, doctors' offices do offer the flu shot. Also, there are multiple public health centers that provide free access to the flu shot. You will also see it much more common today than many years ago, being available at your local pharmacy. And lastly, many employers do provide flu shots to their employees, often free of charge. And if your employer is not providing that service, talk to your supervisor or HR representative. It's a good thing to discuss, and it's potentially an opportunity to help provide a good service for the workers and help people in the workplace stay healthy and productive.
Dr. Okarowski, how long do you suggest to stay home and get rest after you have contacted the flu?
That's a great question. We're often asked that. The general rule of thumb is that many people can get and develop the flu, and symptoms typically last for a well individual 3 to 5 days, and often as long as 7 days. The general rule of thumb is don't try to come back to work or be socially active, reintroduce yourself to other people until at least 24 hours after your fever has subsided and you're off all medications that would lower your temperature. So just to summarize, the real rule of thumb is 24 hours after the fever has completely subsided and you're feeling well and you're starting to turn the corner and feel like yourself again.
Typically, how long do the symptoms last? How long should you expect to feel under the weather and start to feel like 100% back to your normal self again?
That's a great question. It can be highly variable based on the health of the individual. It's typically a longer illness in the very young or the very old, and it's a longer illness in those with major medical problems, as we stated earlier, like asthma, diabetes, and heart disease. But typically a well individual will recover from the flu within about a 3 to 5 day window. This includes healthy children over the age of 5 and most adults. Sometimes symptoms last longer than that. They can go as long as 7 days or even longer if people develop other illnesses associated with the flu.
If you have received the vaccine, then you're stating that it's a shorter amount of time for them to recuperate and get well again.
Yes, generally, typically that's true. Not in all cases, but what we're seeing, and this is largely anecdotal at this point, but what we are seeing is those who have gotten the flu shot tend to describe their symptoms and recovery period as significantly shorter than those who chose not to get the flu shot.
So when you go back or in your workplace, make sure that everything is always clean and sterilized. Wash your hands often, clean your work area, make sure everything that you touch has been cleaned. Does that help?
As a general rule of thumb, there are some basic things you can do in the workplace to make sure you don't develop the flu or spread the flu, and those would be, keep good general cleanliness in your workspace. Hand sanitizers are good, easily available methods to keep your hands clean. You can also use sanitizing wipes to keep your keyboard, your phone, etc. clean if those are in your workplace. And the other one is to, generally, if you do feel like you're developing symptoms, how to cough appropriately. Coughing into the arm can help decrease the spread of the virus or any common cold. So those are some of the simple techniques that you can use to help minimize the spread of cough, colds, and or flu.
So I think I have the flu. Should I think about going into work?
Yeah, that's a question we get all the time, and the general rule of thumb is a simple one. If you think you have the flu or other serious illness, don't go into work, and your colleagues will appreciate you that much more for it. If you think you have significant illness, the flu or other symptoms, by all means, stay out of work, call your doctor. Of course, alert the folks at work that you're not coming in. But if you do think you have the flu, we don't recommend you go in, and you really need appropriate medical follow-up. Many people can ride out their symptoms at home, but many people do develop significant enough symptoms, and your doctor can most accurately answer those questions for you.
Thank you, Dr. Okarowski, for all your help today, clearing up all our issues and questions about the flu.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen 3 times each week, Tuesdays at 7 p.m., Thursdays at 8 p.m., and Saturdays at 5 p.m.